Doctor/therapist of Reddit, do you have any no, that's not normal stories? If so, what abnormal habit/oddity did the patient have thinking it was normal? I had a patient with a cut in his mouth casually say, you know, when you're chewing on some glass and I had to stop him and ask for clarification. Apparently after he finished a bottle of beer he would just bite into it. He said he liked the feeling of chewing on the glass. Nice guy though. Edit. To address a request for more context, I was a paramedic student doing a clinical rotation and the guy comes in complaining of bleeding more than usual. I don't know if it was a pica thing, but he did admit to frequent and recent prior meth use. I always have had trouble breathing during exercise, but my mom said I was just lazy and called me the family couch potato. I always had cough that would linger for months after a cold or flu, so in general I coughed all winter. My mom called it a winter cough and didn't worry about it. My college roommate was worried about my cough and recommended I go to the doctor. I was like, oh no, it's just a winter cough. She was like, that is not a thing. Yeah, turns out I have permanently damaged lungs from years of untreated asthma and pneumonia. Not a doctor but a nurse. Mother brought toddler in for distended belly. Asked several questions, including how toddler was eating, if she'd eaten anything different. She mentioned the toddler ate paper, string, hair, etc. often. Mom was truly surprised all toddlers don't do this. Thankfully there was no blockage and the distension was benign. Doctor referred mom to see their pediatrician for pica. Other than that, I've typically only worked with people who were aware when something they did wasn't normal. Not the doctor, but after I had a UTI I was given antibiotics and was complaining to my housemate who was a med student how awful they made me feel and I couldn't wait to be off them. She told me antibiotics are supposed to make you feel better, and from what I described I must be allergic to them. I was really surprised because I thought allergies meant you broke out in hives or something like that. Visibly I was fine. I just had this feeling like my skin was rotting off, even though my skin looked normal. A few years later I was accidentally given the antibiotic I was supposed to be allergic to and had no reaction, so I'm not sure what happened there. My half siblings both have porphyria, so I wonder if it's related somehow. I was a patient in this. I have gotten stung an abnormally large amount of times from bees as kids. Every time the spot would swell up and double the size, i.e. if I got stung on my hand, my whole hand would double in size. It would be red and hurt for like a week, and then become super itchy for another week, in total lasting about 2 weeks. I thought this was normal, and what happened when everyone got stung? Even when I went to see an allergist, and they told me I was allergic I still thought it was normal for bee stings to be like that. It wasn't until my friend told me that when she gets stung it looks like a mosquito bite and goes away in 2 days that I realized my reactions are a little extreme. I have scores of those stories, maybe thousands. Every day I wind up slowly shaking my head and gently saying, nope, not normal. Most of the time it's silly, or boring, or common. There are loads of misconceptions. Most anti-vaxxers, I've found, have no idea how vaccines really work, much less basic understanding of human biology. This despite the fact that they think they are smarter than the entirety of the CDC and WHO, which is interesting. I digress. My favorite that comes to mind was when I was counseling a young couple about their infertility. As it turned out, the man was masturbating several times a day, even at the woman's most fertile time of the month, and they were both adamant that they wanted to have a child. She was sullen and angry for the whole appointment and said, he wakes up like 3 times a night to jack off. He turned to her and said, everybody does. This was in addition to maybe 5 to 9 times a day, his admission. I told him that he simply had to know that sperm are lost with every ejaculate and can only be made at a certain rate, so his count per ejaculate was absolutely low. He was furious that I even suggest he avoid masturbating for a few days a month. I gave them a calendar and have intercourse with his wife. He wanted her tested to see what's really wrong here. I advised that he give the masturbating a rest first. She left him less than a year later. When I heard that I smiled and remember thinking, good for her. Sometimes you just got to try again. I'm the patient, but whatever, it seems like that's what we are doing here anyway. I always thought caffeine giving you energy / making it hard to sleep was a myth. I had heard the same about sugar and chocolate growing up, actually myths, and my mom had a lot of those old wives' tales, like carrots being good for your eyes, so I just figured it was one of those imperceptible effects where you needed like 10 coffees or a nutritional deficiency to notice. In fact, I found that drinking a can of Coke before bed helped me sleep. A few of my cousins said similar things. Eventually I met someone who would be up all night if she drank a strong tea after 6 PM. Caffeine had a crazy effect on her. So I asked some of my other friends and a lot of them had similar experiences, though not quite to that extent. Anyway, it turns out most of my family, including me, has ADHD and caffeine just acts like mild Adderall. I'm a midwife in the UK. I was inducing a woman, and I had to put some medication in the woman's vagina. She gave a history of never having had a smear test, and was in her 30s, so when I felt a lump on her cervix, I was concerned. I explained to her what I had found, and that I thought we needed to get a doctor to check her out, and make a plan for a full assessment once she had given birth. At this point her husband piped up, "Oh, you mean the lump on the left side, at about the 10 o'clock position? Yeah, that's been there for over a year." It turns out that he had casually been checking out her cervix every time he fingered her, and had been checking her cervix regularly throughout the pregnancy. I advised him to stop doing that. During my internship, we had a patient in the emergency room who thought everyone carries some sort of hemorrhoids with them. I thought it was the language barrier, but my colleague told me this man thought it was normal until it started to hurt when he walked. Not only did he think hemorrhoids are normal, he thought keeping his asshole clean is not important either. Upon examination he had grade 4 hemorrhoids with some infection. Biggest hemorrhoids I seen this far. We took him to surgery next day. I told the nurse to please kindly explain to him and his family everything about hemorrhoids and hygiene. This is one of my top 10. Oh hell no. I'm a doctor. A guy came in complaining about constipation and back pain. His main complaint was constipation as his back has been hurting for years, but it's gotten so bad he can't get out of bed anymore and seldom eats. I get a bad feeling and order up some lab work. It comes back and it's like good with a few hiccups, but nothing unusual for a man in his age who hasn't been to a checkup in a year. Bad feeling persists and I order a full body scan on him despite having no actual evidence of anything. And it's cancer. Every single bone in his spine was full of tumors. My ex-girlfriend back in college was performing oral on me, and when she went down to service my balls she stopped and was like, "Hey, where are your balls?" I was just like, "Oh yeah, they do that sometimes when my sack tightens," and popped them back down into place from where they were hiding above the pubic bone. The face she made was one of abject horror mixed with confusion, with just a dash of amusement thrown in. That face was my first clue that it wasn't as normal as I thought. Turns out, according to my doctor, it's not really a health problem or anything. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just what we in the medical field call really weird. So yeah, turns out that not a lot of guys have what I like to call wandering balls. A decent number of guys can push them up there on purpose, but not a lot have them just kinda migrate there on their own. Apparently it wasn't normal to try to predict future social encounters. I would try and think about what topics could come up, what people I might interact with, etc. From there I would make an elaborate web of possibilities, mainly to cover my backside, and try to avoid any of the possible scenarios that would be embarrassing. Example, if I say it to Kate, she might say B, but what if she misunderstands what I said by A, then she would say C, and I could say D, in order to fix the misunderstanding. If I say D and Kate is still upset / angry, I could say E to try and patch things up. But also, what if Kate doesn't say B? What if she says F instead, and I say G and this causes a misunderstanding, to which I say H to fix it? And if H doesn't work, then what can I say to make amends? I spent hours every single day doing this. Someone says I was daydreaming this scenarios. I'd actually talk out loud whatever was being said in the scenario. Turns out it was severe social anxiety. Edit, just to clarify a little more depth. Yet another patient chime in here. When I was in 7th grade, I got my first period. Within about 10 minutes I had bled through all my clothes and was smearing blood on the chair. Absolutely mortified. I did my best to hide it until my sister picked me up after school. I had been given a small book to read and knew I wasn't dying, so let her know, and she provided me with, at the time, a very insufficient amount of supplies. I never got a parental talk or any health aid that addressed it, so I thought I was a total wuss. Others were going to school and being normal on their periods, and I couldn't even quite walk some days without some OTC edge cutting goodness. The whole thing just completely wiped me out. They would come random times and bleed random amounts for random intervals. I was told I needed to get better at tracking and stop bleeding on things. Please note that on my heavy couple days, which could come at any time, I would completely bleed through a 10-hour pad and be getting blood seeping into my jeans within 45 minutes. Classes in high school and college are both slightly longer than that. I'm told by my small town doctor to wear 2 pads stacked under Depends diapers if I'm worried, and that some people bleed a lot. I stop asking for help and get very good at laundry. Note that this whole time I'm anemic, but some women just are, and I'm a vegetarian, so nothing to do here. I'm also getting faint spells, unable to stay awake some days, mood swings, just all the greatest hits of things small town doctors agree sound icky, but don't look into. I try to take a PE class, required, in college, and I'm told to sit in the corner because just walking at 2 miles per hour on the treadmill spikes my heart rate up higher than we are supposed to allow it to get in cardio 1. I'm asked to go see a doctor as the instructor reported my issues to health services when I nearly faint in class warm up. On it goes, getting better and worse, for years. I get over it and admire how so many people have it so together in life. It's not until I'm in grad school that I start bleeding literally every day. Not the full flood of flow, but kind of the amount that can be caught in a 10-hour pad or 2 a day. Annoying. I try to deal. I ask my primary doctor for birth control because I have learned that can even things out for some people. I take 2 oral brands, both religiously, for 2 months each. There is no effect with either. Then my organs start not being happy. I drop out of grad school at about my 2nd we have no idea, have a nice life visit for unexplained symptoms. Eventually they figure a few things out, one being that my bone marrow is failing to produce not only enough red blood cells, but that the ones I have are too small, they can't actually carry the oxygen. I can breathe as much as I want. A bunch of these suckers just going around in circles without delivering shit. Freeloaders. Also, while I'm in decent shape in a lot of ways, that gallblade is a lost cause, and we'll be taking that out. I go from to the critical decisions unit and stay there, with checks every 15 minutes, for over 3 weeks, while they get me into a shape where I can have the surgery. Many 4th bags are drained at the altar of my surviving a basic outpatient surgery. I'm given what I think are called the good drugs. I don't remember the names of them. I tuned it out because I was too busy beaming at the nice nurse and thinking about how great everything is and how nice it was they had apple juice and how great apples are in general. I eventually have the procedure. I recover. I go home. The doctors continue to look at why my body seems like it's overtaxed when it's not doing anything special. Iron supplements don't seem to help enough, and my iron stays low and my blood count refuses to go into the normal range. They send me to a hematologist as part of my release, and he's a great guy. Gives me fourths that I'm terrified of, but that make me feel great for weeks. I have so much energy. And he asks me during the screenings how my period is, and I tell him normal, since it had returned to normal for me. But on the 3rd visit with he starts really grilling me about it. Whatever, I give him the TMI of exactly how much blood and what kind of solids go where, when and why during a woman's period. His eyes slowly start getting wider and wider until I realize that something I said was very wrong. He lets me know that this is not normal. His version of the doctor trying to give bad news calmly goes way too far into perky mode. Didn't I know there was an obgyn department in the same hospital group, and he was just gonna call over there really fast and ask a couple questions. I signed that release form with the front, right? Just checking. What a coincidence. Ultrasound has an apt in 2 days. So does some fancy specialist no babies allowed OBGYN. He is creepy, dead-eyed smiling this whole time. But he makes sure to tell me to never answer normal again on a medical screening. For any reason. Ever. Turns out that my body is slightly whack. Most people with periods have true cycles. They build up a little mass in the uterus, then ovulated it, then shed it, rest and then repeat. I, however, may make that build it up hormone the whole time. Every week is add to the pile week, and there is no break. Spitting out those cells is the 24th of July 365. Even with the heavy flow, lots of lining, built up over the years. That led to my clots longer than my thumb coming out. Tissue wasn't broken down before it was released. It eventually led to the everyday leaking that happened right before my total breakdown. It led to minor leak cramps as my body tried to build, hold, and shed all at the same time. Nowadays I get a nice strong shot in my arm on a regular basis and have normal 30-day periods with light spotting. Cramps are bearable. Headaches mostly have to with the crap I eat and not hormones. I can go outside in a cold breeze and not lose feelings in my extremities. I can stand up really fast. I can walk for multiple minutes in a row without any feeling of lightheadedness. I still keep those overpass pads I don't need anymore and in places because old habits die hard. TL. Doctor, bled internally for a few years, bled externally for a bit. Raised being told constantly that it was normal and to deal with it better, that no one else complained like I did. Bled on everything I loved. Bled on most things that I didn't favor. Missed a shit ton of things, so I wouldn't bleed all over the place in public areas. Let some organs almost give out on me. Lost a tiny gland no one cares about anyways. Accrued tens of thousands in medical debt. Eventually got told at age 25 that blood loss is not normal. Doctor who broke this to me took a few minutes to process that I really thought half the world bled like that.